Okay, 9.4, our third to last lesson of the year. We're dividing rational expressions. You can look at our learning target. We're dividing algebraic fractions. So super, super huge concept here. Something that you learned a long, long time ago. When you divide by a fraction, what you do is you transform that division into multiplication. You flip the second fraction. Look at this box here. I've highlighted a over b divided by x over y. Keep the first fraction the same. That's a over b times, and then you flip that second fraction, you get y over x. Only flip the second fraction. And then you can work it out. Here's the really cool thing about today's lesson. Once you flip that fraction, you're back to 9.3. So work with me here. We're going to be looking at number 1. It says x over 6 divided by 2x over 3. How do we do it? We rewrite the first fraction exactly as it is. Then we multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. You have to flip only the second fraction. And at this point, guys, what you're really going to do is look for things to cancel out. I hope you can clearly see that the x's are going to go away because one is high, one is low. That's what we did in this last mini unit. Now, there will be times when you'll have a host of numbers. What I do want to call your attention to is you are more than welcome to just use the fraction button. You can see up on top I have a 3. Down below I have a 6 times a 2. And very quickly that whole fraction becomes 1/4. So that's going to be your final answer. You could also have canceled this by hand. You could have said 3 and 6. I can divide by a 3 and divide by a 3. I'd have a 1, I'd have a 2. Then I have 2 times 2 is 4 down below. You could have done that by hand just as well. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. Ironically, a lot of kids are probably going to find this easier. Here's what I'm getting at. Whatever comes after the division is what you flip. So recopy the first fraction. Don't change that at all. Flip the second fraction. Flip what comes after the division. Then it goes back to the problems that we're dealing with earlier in the last unit. What do you think would cancel out here? The x plus 3's, I heard somebody say, you're absolutely right. Anything else? The x's, there's one x up on high, one x down below. What are you left with? X minus 2 all over x plus 4. You are done. So this tends to be what you're going to be doing time and time again. Let's go to number 3. And, again, what you're going to see in a heartbeat is that you flip the second fraction, never the first. Rewrite the first one. Just flip that second one. And now be on the lookout for things to cancel. Will things cancel out here? Yeah. X plus 5 on top, x plus 5 down below. Those are going to cancel. Anything else that will cancel? The x and then x squared. You see, x squared is really x times x. So 1x here and 1x here cancels out. You're left with an x in the numerator. But then we have all these numbers here, the 6 and the 3 and the 2. And you could either cancel this by hand, or if you'd rather, you could just go to alpha y equals and say, okay, so what's on top? In the numerator, I only have a 6. What's down below? Well, I've got a 3 times a 2. And I think you can clearly see that's all going to cancel out to a 1. There won't even be a fraction left. So all that cancels out to a 1. You're just left with an x also. It's 1x. By the way, you could have canceled this out by hand. You could have said 3 divides into 6 twice. Divide a 3 by 3, you get a 1. 6 divided by 3 is a 2. These 2's wipe out. You get the same answer. Okay, we doing okay? Take a look at number 4. Number 4 is a little bit of a twist. You know, sometimes kids get upset and they'll say, Mr. Dobner, that second term isn't a fraction. Well, make it a fraction. X minus 2, you could say it's over 1. So recopy your first fraction. Don't change a thing. Just recopy it the way you see it. Multiply by the flip that you get over here. Okay? So your second term after the division isn't written as a fraction. Make it a fraction. Put it over 1. Does anything cancel out? The x minus 2 and the 2 minus x, we saw that yesterday. Subtractions cancel when their orders are switched. But what do we have to write there? -1. Those cancel out to a -1. 3 times -1 is -3. Down below we've got 5x squared. That's your final answer. Okay? Let's go to the back. And guys, I think it's here where even if kids were saying, hey, this is pretty good, there can be a momentary scare. There can be a momentary scare here because these look way tougher. These look way, way tougher. Look, what I want to tell you is the second fraction is really in that denominator. You don't have to rewrite the problem like this, but if you wanted to, you could have said, well, look, whatever's in the denominator is what you're dividing by. Right? Whatever's down below in that denominator, you're saying take the numerator, divide it by that green highlighted expression. So at this point, what I want to tell you is you don't have to rewrite it that way, but you most certainly could just flip that second fraction. That's what I personally would recommend that you do. Recopy this first fraction up here. You get x plus 1 over x plus 5. It's this bottom fraction that you've got to flip. Remember, what you're dividing by, that's where you take your reciprocal. It's that second fraction, or it's always the bottom fraction that you're going to see here. Does anything cancel out? Yes. X plus 1. Carbon copy on top and below. What are you left with? X plus 2 on top, x plus 5 down below. You're more than welcome to put parentheses around the top and the bottom, but that would be sufficient. In the same way for number 6, we're getting close to wrapping up. I hope you're drawn to the second fraction, the fraction in the denominator. That's the one that you've got to flip. Rewrite the top one exactly how it is. It's 1 over 2x. Don't change that. But it's that second fraction, guys, that will get flipped. This is where we've got to be very, very careful. Does anything cancel? No. Please be aware that not every problem will have to have something cancel out. I think so very often kids will look at a problem like this and say, well, something's got to wipe out. It's got to be the 2's. No, for the 2's to cancel out, one would have to be up on top, one would have to be down below. Up on top, we just have 1 times x plus 1. Down below, a 2 times a 2 is a 4. So watch out. There will be some problems, most definitely, where you don't really simplify and cancel things out. You might just have to multiply things out. And then for our last problem, maybe the one that looks the most intimidating, and it's really not as bad. Look, it's always that denominator that gets flipped. Okay, that's the biggest idea of the day. Recopy the top. Got x minus 4 times x plus 2 over x plus 2 times x minus 2. And in green, that's what gets flipped. What used to be downstairs gets moved upstairs. What was upstairs goes downstairs. And if you can get here, guys, if you can get to this point, you are incredibly close to getting things to cancel out. Do things cancel out? Yeah, what? X minus 4, I heard someone say, one's up on top, one's down below. Very good. Anything else cancel out? X plus 2's. Now, this is where sometimes kids get a little confused. They'll say, well, which x plus 2's? I've got 3 of them. As long as you cancel one on top and one down below, you're good. You could have canceled the one that was further away. At the end of the day, it's going to be the same answer. But this is just showcasing another idea. How about the x plus 2 and the x minus 2? Will those cancel out? No. They have to be exactly the same expression to be able to do that. So your final answer, you could have x plus 2, x minus 5 up on top. Down below, you'll have x minus 2 times x plus 1. And guys, that is the end of 9.4.